And maybe you're not at the other side of it like I am, looking back and going, you know what? I know that God used that to start weaving together and planting seeds of a new vision and a new purpose in my life. You're not there yet. So just borrow my faith for a minute, borrow a little bit of my trust in God's heart and in his character, and know he's not trying to screw with your life. He's bringing gifts that are planting seeds of the future in your soul. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Daron Earlewine podcast. Daron Earlewine, your host. Glad to be back with you. Thanks again for downloading the podcast, whether it be on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. It means so much that you're part of this podcast community. And we'd love to hear from you. Leave a review on your platform, social media. Send me an email, text, whatever you'd like to do. We'd love to hear from you so you know, I can know, we can know how we can be praying for you. We can know how these episodes are impacting your resurrection of purpose as we go chapter by chapter through my book, The Death of a Dream. Email me, Daron@blackbirdmission.com. Text me, 317-550-5070. Or you reach out to me on socials. Just search my name out there on Instagram, Facebook, or TikTok. Hey, we're jumping into this next chapter. This one was fun to write. Really fun story in chapter 7. This chapter is called The Whiskey, which is not about the drink. It's about the bar, although you can get whiskey at the whiskey, but it's spelled differently. Doesn't matter. The Whiskey A Go-Go, one of the most famous bars on the Sunset Strip in Los Angeles, California. And here's the question I have for you as we get into this episode is, have you ever had a moment where you thought, this was it? This is the moment that's going to change my life forever. The stars have aligned. God has shone down upon me. It's all going to happen now. And then it absolutely doesn't. I sure do. That's what this chapter is about. And the ramifications of moments like this are massive. When I was first writing this chapter, the part of it, I just really want to tell the story because it's such an epic freaking story of how this night unfolded. But as I reflected upon it, was putting together this podcast, and even writing the chapter in the book, I realized how baseline, absolutely fundamental these moments are, because how aggressively disappointing moments like this attack our confidence and trust in the character of God. There's a lot of comedy and fun stuff in the chapter about this story, but the bottom line is, when we have moments, when we have circumstances of massive disappointment or confusion, they can lead to disillusionment, and before we know it, a complete disregard for the actual character of God, because we don't like the circumstances that we found ourselves in. And the story about this one, if you're reading along in the book, if you've read the book, if you've purchased the book, once again, just let me say thank you. It still blows my mind that people really bought the book, that you bought the book, and that you're part of this process. It means the world to me. So just off the bat, thank you. But if you read this chapter, the story is just nuts, and none of it, I don't tell lies, so none of the story is made up. It was one of the most amazingly epic, I can't believe this is happening nights of probably still to this day of my life. To be like, set a goal a year before, we're going to play the whiskey, and then it happened. We actually got booked to play the whiskey. We show up, we unload, and it was so cool. I don't think I've had it in the chapter of the book, but our keyboard player who booked all the shows with me, he had worked, I do tell about one of the parts of the story, but we had this deal with Marriott where we could stay at the coolest, awesome, most awesome hotels for $39 a night. So that night we stayed at the Renaissance in Beverly Hills. We felt like such rock stars. We're in Beverly Hills. We come and unload our stuff and the whiskey. We show up there. Our name is on the whole marquee. It's this is for real. That marquee right there said Van Halen at some point, and now it says Paradigm 5. And then the weird part about why are there two bands before us? Why do they have the same name? Why are they called Paradigm? What's the deal? But we get there, find out. I know the story. I'm telling you the story that you read in the book, but we find out there's going to be this. They're doing the showcase. Every major record company in LA is going to be there. we get set up. We're like, and I like you just those moments where you sense like last chapter talked about like the gentle nudges. Like this wasn't like a gentle nudge. I feel like this was like God shouting from the rooftops of heaven. Like, this is it. I've set this up. Your whole dream is going to happen tonight, Daron. Like, it's just so perfect, right? All my dreams coming true on the Sunset Strip in LA. There's going to be every record company in LA is going to be there. Then we walk down to the Roxy. They're having a worship concert on the Sunset Strip. Hello, are you kidding me? Right? We go there, walk in, talk to the guy. They bring us on stage, pray for us, tell everyone to come down and support Paradigm 5. I didn't even walk back down the Sunset Strip to Whiskey. I literally floated on cloud 9 because it was like every record company's there. All these Christians are going to come down. They just prayed for us. Everybody's praying for us. This is a slam dunk. The night starts. Every record company's there. They got all their shirts with the little, and like the little pullovers, Capital, this, and I'm working the room using all my spiritual DNA, woo, communication. I'm doing it all. I'm the evangelist. I'm working the bar. Hey, who you here to see, right? Paradigm. Oh, great band. Love those guys. But have you heard about Paradigm 5? Little known band out of the Midwest. Hot. These guys are hot, right? Talking about us. Okay, I might stick around. So I'm convinced, here's how this is going to work. And then the bar fills up, right? Bar's packed. We're at the Whiskey. I feel like we're back. It's 1988. I'm just waiting for Guns N' Roses to walk in and be like, whoa, we came because we heard you guys are amazing. They didn't. So, Paradigm plays, really good, awesome. Bar's packed, getting warmed up. You know what I mean? We're up in the dressing room of the Whiskey. Hello, right? I could basically smell David Lee Roth. It's like his aura was still there. And then as we're getting ready to get warmed up to go on, this band Bardo comes on. You read about it in the book, but there's no way I adequately expressed how disgustingly terrible Bardo was. The bar is packed with people. They start playing. The dude has a mesh outfit on. He should have never worn mesh. This is like a sweatshirt only kind of guy, all right? And then they had this girl, lots of latex involved. They were doing things with microphones that microphones should never be done to, right? They're just to sing into. And it was raunchy and bad and gross and unsightly. And I'm not exaggerating. The place emptied out as if I had pulled a fire alarm. Gone. It went from a packed bar to literally no one in the Whiskey except us and the sound guy and the bartenders. It completely empties out. And I wish I had a camera angle on my face as everyone was exiting the bar. Like, no, this can't be happening. Like, my dream was right here. God orchestrated this whole thing. How is this happening? Everybody leaves. But then I think, you know what, Lord? I know what you're doing. I know what you're doing, Lord. You wanted all these non-Christian people to go out, and then everybody from the Roxy, they're going to come back in, fill the bar back up. It's going to be this amazing night. Holy Spirit's probably going to show up. 800 people are going to get saved. It's going to be amazing. And then it starts raining. I mean, it started raining in Southern California, thunder, lightning, just buckets and buckets of rain start pouring down out of the sky. And now I'm thinking to myself, like, God, I think maybe you hate me. Like, how is this possible? Anyway, it rains. No one comes from the Roxy. We play to a completely empty bar, but gave every ounce of energy we had. And we got the thing recorded. I don't know where the freaking videotape is. I would give anything to be able to see that performance because I played the Whiskey. And here's the deal. We didn't get signed because there was nobody freaking there. Bottom line, right? It was just us and some roaches and the dude that I think his name was Leonard or something, the bartender. But here's what I say in the book, okay? So there's the story. And I know you probably don't have a story where you played the Whiskey, whatever, but maybe you have a story where everything was lined up. It was going to happen. I had the promotion, the job, the marriage, the kid, this, that, whatever it was. I felt like God was setting me up for the most amazing breakthrough ever, and then fill in the blank. And I'm trying to figure out, does God just take some kind of sick pleasure out of screwing with me and letting me down constantly? And if you've ever felt like that, welcome to the party. A, B, we're just like every human being ever. And specifically, the Israelites in the Old Testament over and over and over and over again. We'll get to them in a minute. Let me read you a little excerpt from the book. It said, about the close of the night, one conversation with people in the bar planted a seed that would take years to germinate and grow. Everything I didn't know that night at the whiskey, God did know. I now believe he was there in the middle of that experience, driving the roots of his dream even deeper into my soul, roots that would continue to lead me to be exactly who I am born to be. So much of the roots of nights like this created the dream and the vision of the ministry Pub Theology that I started many, many years later. Okay. If, like me, you've had one of these experiences you just knew would change everything, but then it didn't, you may be wondering, as I did at the time, why would God let me get so close to what I wanted that I could taste it without letting me experience the thrill of seeing my hopes come to reality? Okay. There's the big question. Let me hit you with what came to me as I was writing this chapter about God's character. Chapter goes on and says, it's easy to misinterpret these moments as God being cruel or withholding, as if he gets some sort of deranged joy out of dangling that dream carrot out in front of us just to trick us in the end. Now I've come to know and trust his heart and can look back on our night at the whiskey with so much more gratitude. The Father gave me this experience, even though I kind of stretched the truth to get us invited there. And even though he knew what would happen to Paradigm 5 in a few short months. He knew the plans he had for me, plans not to harm me, but to bring me hope in the future. And in his grace, he allowed me a night at the whiskey as a gift. I can just imagine the joy it brought him to let me fulfill a dream that had been stirring around in me since childhood. I didn't have kids then, but now I think about how I would feel if one of my sons got to make a dream like that happen. I would be weeping tears of joy just watching them have that moment, and I imagine him smiling tears of joy as he watched me play my heart out that night. See, here's the deal, team. Disappointments become a direct challenge into our perception of God's character. It would have been just as easy if I didn't know the heart of God to see him as, like I said, as like, this is just gross. Like, do you get some kind of sick pleasure out of seeing me disappointed? That's what this deal is, God. You're God. I'm not. You're just going to take my dream and it's going to just die. And you know what it probably is, God? You're probably mad at me for the sin in my life. That's what it is. You're just up there so mad that I keep sinning. Here's the deal. Guess what? Hey, angels, get around. Check this out. Darren thinks he's getting signed tonight. So you get screwed. How about Bardo? Like, they were probably messengers from Satan, right? You can start thinking these things and think, how can I trust God if he takes that much joy out of screwing me out of the moment that was supposed to change my life? Unless he's God and he has a great plan for my life and he's for me, not against me, and he's an amazing dad. And in that moment, he knew what was going to happen in my life and thought, you know what? My son would love to look back on this and know he had that night. That night was an absolute gift of God's grace and generosity and love for me. But if I don't trust his character, I see it as just the opposite. And I wonder for you where that's at. What's your whiskey moment that you're still holding a grudge against God because it was right there? You should have had it. And maybe you're not at the other side of it like I am, looking back and going, you know what? I know that God used that to start weaving together and planting seeds of a new vision and a new purpose in my life. You're not there yet. So just borrow my faith for a minute, borrow a little bit of my trust in God's heart and in his character, and know he's not trying to screw with your life. He's bringing gifts that are planting seeds of the future in your soul. You know, I look back at the Old Testament, and this started jumping off the page to me as I was preparing for this episode. is that time and time again, the people of Israel would grumble and complain to God about the times that their expectations weren't met or their perspective on a situation lacked faith. Time and time again, like they were really the worst. I'm not trying to get bad up, beat up the Israelites, but like for instance, God's setting them up to bring them out of hundreds of years of slavery to the Egyptians, right? And as God sends them out, hey, I want you to go out here. I'm going to set you free. And he sets this whole scene up for God to set them free, cross the Red Sea. It's an amazing miracle. And as they see the Egyptians coming to overtake them, they say to Moses, why did you bring us out here to die in the wilderness? Weren't there enough graves for us in Egypt? What have you done to us? Why did you make us leave Egypt? Didn't we tell you this what happened while we were still in Egypt? We said, leave us alone. Let us be slaves to the Egyptians. It's better to be a slave in Egypt than a corpse in the wilderness, right? God is about to split the Red Sea and set them free from slavery, and they can't see what God's doing. They think he's screwing with them, and they say, you know what? It's better to be a slave than be free in the wilderness. And maybe that's where you're at. Maybe that's where you're at. Is circumstances have led you to believe that God's abandoned you, but possibly if you could trust him, if you could take that next gentle nudge in your life, maybe he's just about to part the Red Sea in your life and set you free. So he does. He splits the Red Sea. They walk into freedom. And then 1 month in their journey to freedom, they arrive at a camp, the 15th day of the second month. The second month. 1 month after, 1 month after leaving, this is in Exodus 16, 1 month after leaving the land of Egypt, there too, the whole community of Israel complained about Moses and Aaron. The whole community, not like 5 or 6 dudes, right? Everybody's mad. And they say, if only the Lord had killed us back in Egypt, they moaned. There we sat around pots filled with meat and ate all the bread we wanted, but now you have brought us into the wilderness to starve us all to death. Right? God just split open the Red Sea and saved them all from their enemies. Here they are a month later. You know what? We're hungry. I don't have any food. Here it is. God just brought us out here to screw with us again, just letting us die in the desert. Thanks a lot. Good job, Moses. Good job, Aaron. Following the gentle nudges, the Kairos moments of God. And here we are. We're all going to die because that's what God does to his people. And then what does God do? He shows grace even on their complaining, and he sends manna every day to meet their needs. And he sends quail to come and, to bring them meat. I mean, he takes care of their every need. Why? Because he's in a covenant relationship with them, and he's promised to protect and provide for them forever. The same is true if you're yoked with Jesus and you're following him in a covenant relationship. What's interesting about this, though, this is a thought, this just jumped off the page to me too, is when the Israelites saw the manna. I mean, this is something God made up. They're like rice cakes of some sort that just showed up out of nowhere on the ground. It's a miracle. Every day, God did a miracle for the Israelites. They'd never seen it before. They didn't know what it was. So you know what the word manna actually means? It means, what is it? God provides a miracle for them. They don't have the context to understand what it is, so they call it, what is it? And here's what I think sometimes happens. Sometimes God's provision in our life exceeds our understanding. Like, his ways are above our ways, and he begins working miracles in our lives that we can't see. And so we call it manna. God brings a relationship into our life. God brings a disappointment into our life. God brings a difficulty in our life. And we say, what is this? Right? What is it? What is this? What? Manna. We don't trust his character. And God's saying, no, listen, that's me showing up daily to provide and sustain you, to lead you into your promised land. So where are you at? Have the disappointing circumstances made you think that God's just screwing with you? He's not. He loves you. He's for you. He's giving you gracious gifts just because he wants to see you experience joy. He's going to show up every day. He's going to bring sometimes manna that you don't know what it is. It exceeds your understanding of what he's doing, but he's showing up and he's showing himself faithful. Now, here's the tough part in this, and I don't want to get more aggressive, but because I want to land the plane here in a minute. But here's what was really sad about what happened to the Israelites. Again and again, right? Adversity comes, like it always triggers a lack of trust. Then they run out of, they don't have water, and then God makes water come out of a rock, and then they get tired of the manna and they complain again. They could constantly, every time the circumstances don't line up, they complain about God because they don't trust his character. And eventually, here's what happens. God sends spies into the promised land where he's going to take them, this place that he's promised them, the resurrection of their purpose in the promised land. And he sends spies, and they come back and majority of them, except two of them, say, there's no way. We can't trust God. God can't bring us into the promised land. Now, I know he sustained us for 40 years out here in the desert, but, he's probably going to set us up for another failure. We don't trust his character. They don't trust his power. They don't trust his ability. Here's what's really, really sad. Actually, it wasn't 40 years because this was actually stirred them into 40 years. God pardons he about wipes them all out. Moses says, no, God, please be gracious. And he forgives them. But then God says, nobody in this generation will enter the promised land. An entire generation of God's people missed their opportunity to move into the promise that God had for them. Entire generation. God said, none of you will make it. You will all die in the wilderness, and then your offspring, they can go into the promised land. They missed it because they complained and grumbled and had a lack of faith that God could do what God said he was going to do, and that God was good. Here's what I'm begging you, and I'm trying to encourage myself. Please don't miss the promised land that God is guiding you into because you misinterpret your circumstances as a lack of loving character of him. He loves you. He's gracious to you. He's for you, not against you. He's near you, not far from you in this. And he has created you on purpose and for a purpose. And he is guiding you to become the person he created you to be in Christ Jesus. And he has good works for you to accomplish that are prepared in advance for you to do. And even when you can't see it, and even when it looks like the circumstances don't line up, and even when you can't understand what the miracle is, what is it? Don't complain against him. Don't grumble against him. Trust him, because he has shown himself trustworthy from generation to generation to generation. Whew. That's all I got for you in this episode. He's faithful. I'll leave you with this scripture. It's a famous one, but it's a good one. Jeremiah 29, 11 through 14. Where God says, for I know the plans I have for you. They are plans for good and not for disaster, to give you a future and a hope. In those days when you pray, I will listen. If you look for me wholeheartedly, you will find me, and I will be found by you. Here's my challenge to you. What does it look like for you to look for God wholeheartedly? Because when you do, you will find him, and you will find him faithful. Appreciate you listening to this episode of the podcast. Love to hear from you. Email me, tweet at me, reach out through socials, and keep trusting him. Keep looking for him. Until we talk again, remember, God's for you, not against you. He's near you, not far away, and he's created you on purpose and for a purpose. I'll talk to you next time right here on the Daron Earlewine Podcast.